Jamie Foxx just ruined Spider-Man No Way Home. Kind of. Okay, check this out. According to Screen Geek and virtually every other news source out there, Jamie Foxx posted up on Instagram a picture of 3 Spider-Men with like his face, right? It's not really his face. I mean, the image looks amazing, but like we'll post it up here so you can see it. The image looks badass, but it's basically like Jamie Foxx like electrified face, and it's like 3 Spider-Men. And then there was a second image that said hashtag chasing spiders. And so everybody's like, yeah, man, basically now it's confirmed Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield are in the movie. But here's the thing, man. You know, look, here's the thing. You know, I totally applaud Sony's desire to keep this under wraps. Sony. It's the worst kept secret in the history of Hollywood. It's the worst kept secret. Everyone knows. It's time to stop pretending. And here's the funny thing, it's not even Sony, it's Marvel Studios, right? Like, Sony were the ones who were like, let's put him in there. Like, everybody basically knows it's there. Marvel Studios are the ones who are like, no, we have to maintain the suspension of disbelief. And I kind of understand both sides to a degree, right? I mean, it changes things when you definitively know, right? If Jamie Foxx alludes to it and you can kind of be like, well, I mean, you know, it depends on how you interpret it, right? You know, or if like the lizard's head just suddenly gets knocked to the side by what's obviously a fist from a person who's been removed, like literally the lizard got punched in the face and they removed the person who did it. You could say, well, it was a strong gust of wind. You know, you know how it is, you know, out there when you're fighting really high up, you know, the wind's strong, you know. Planes and turbulence, you can find some way to cook the books to make it work. But then when you see a trailer and then you see like Andrew Garfield or Tobey Maguire unmask, it throws away all the disbelief. So I can really see where both sides are coming from, but come on, man. We already know what's going on. We already know they're in there. Here's who I want to see, right? I mean, it's cool that we get Tobey Maguire and it's even better that we get Andrew Garfield. Switch that. It's cool that we get Andrew Garfield. It's even better that we get Tobey Maguire. But at the end of the day, I still want to see Miles Morales, man. Miles Morales. I want to see Miles Morales. Look, okay, don't leave, right? Don't leave. Stay with me here. We know Miles Morales exists in the MCU, right? We know he's there. If Miles Morales were going to show up in this movie, it wouldn't be in the main film itself, right? I mean, it would feel forced. You know what I mean? Like, hey everyone, it's Miles Morales. How did he get here? Don't worry about that. Just be happy he's here. And like that would basically be the movie. It'd be a problem. It would feel forced. It would just feel shoved in there. He's so spectacular of a character. I have to, man. I have to, guys. I can't not do this. He's so spectacular of a Spider-Man. God, I'm corny. He's so spectacular of a character that he deserves to be put in there in a proper way. So I say post-credit scenes. Honestly, it kind of makes sense, right? So for those of you guys who are unfamiliar with that, I feel like we may have talked about this before, I'm not 100% sure, but Miles Morales is an Ultimate Universe character, right? So in the Ultimate Universe, which is what the MCU is based off of, that Peter Parker was bitten by a radioactive spider that was an attempt by Norman Osborn, the Green Goblin's company, to duplicate the super soldier serum that made Steve Rogers into Captain America. Miles Morales ends up being bitten by a spider from the same corporation, and so because of that, he ends up becoming Spider-Man. But I love the character of Miles, and the reason why is because for those of you guys who don't read comics, a lot of characters like Peter Parker, they're legacy characters, they're old school characters. They've been around for a very, very, very long time. Peter's had a lot of stories told about him, but in a lot of ways, Peter just feels old hat. He feels like he's just been around the block a few times, and he kind of seems to lack that youthful exuberance that a lot of modern characters have. So a really good example of this is Sam Alexander, also known as Nova. For those of you guys who have been reading the different leaks and rumors and so on and so forth going around the MCU, a lot of you have heard that Richard Rider Nova is supposed to appear in Guardians of the Galaxy 3. I don't know if that's true, it's just something that I've heard so far. Not a big advocate of that. I would much rather see Sam Alexander. He's young, he's exciting, he's funny, he's a character where like he gets powers and he's like, man, I have powers, this is amazing. He reacts the way any of us would react if we were a kid who was suddenly donned with powers. But with Miles Morales, it is a little bit different because Miles Morales' story is more grounded in the gritty realism of the world that we live in. That's what the Ultimate Universe was designed to be. It was designed to be an answer to the question, what if superheroes appeared in the modern day? as it existed in the year 2000. As you guys know, lots changed in the last 21 years, but in the year 2000, when the Ultimate Universe was launched, it was designed to answer that question. By the time Miles came around, a lot of things had changed, right? Peter Parker had basically died, different things along those lines, but a lot of things had changed. The important thing here is that Miles' character is a part black, part Latino character. He basically goes to a charter school. For those of you guys who don't know what that is, it's essentially a system set up whereby individuals who are in very difficult places, right? Very, very poor places can basically win a lottery bid to go to a better school. Now, even they have their own problems, but it's a reflection of inner city life. More so than that, while that kind of stuff is important, what matters the most when it comes to the character of Miles Morales is him becoming Spider-Man. What made this so significant is that when he was initially introduced in Marvel Comics, fans didn't like it, right? Fans love him now, but they hated him at the time. A lot of people hated Miles Morales because Peter Parker was killed off. Literally, Brian Michael Bendis, the writer, killed off the ultimate Spider-Man, Peter Parker. People just, they weren't ready for it, right? I mean, literally, Peter Parker in the Ultimate Universe is what made the Ultimate Universe popular. Prior to that, and then following that, Miles Morales came in and then became Spider-Man. The way in which this transition happened is that eventually, Brian Michael Bendis wrote a story called Spider-Men, which is where Peter Parker from the main Marvel Universe meets Miles Morales from the Ultimate Universe and basically says, hey man, it sucks that your universe's Peter Parker died, but keep doing your thing. Basically, it was Brian Michael Bendis telling fans to shut up, and Miles Morales isn't going anywhere. And they largely did. And then they became fans of Miles Morales as time went on when they gave the comic a chance. And so that kind of a thing is significant. Now tie that into the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Say for example that Tom Holland dies in this movie, or he just kind of gets shunted back off to the Sonyverse, and that's it. He's gonna spend his time forevermore making movies that are strictly based on Sony. I don't think any of that's gonna happen, and we'll talk about why here in a minute, kind of reiterate a few points that we've made from previous videos. But I think a great way for the Marvel Cinematic Universe to have capitalized on that is for a deal to have been worked out between the two where Sony keeps Peter Parker and the Marvel Cinematic Universe gets Miles Morales. And Miles Morales goes forward as Spider-Man. The real question is, would audiences accept him or would they reject him? I don't really know, especially when you consider that in the grand scheme of the Marvel Cinematic Universe's history, we really haven't gotten much of Tom Holland's Spider-Man. We've seen him for what amounts to a couple movies, and that's basically it, right? Like about 3, well, we're getting 4 movies now, but about 3 movies up to this point, right? If you don't include Civil War or any of that stuff. We've seen some things, but we haven't really seen Tom Holland's Spider-Man step into his own, become his own superhero. He was the protege of Iron Man. He worshipped Captain America as a hero. It was always him just kind of following behind somebody else and learning the ropes of what it meant to be a superhero. Not really him out on his own, learning what it means to do things on his own and calling it a day. Even in Spider-Man Far From Home, he was working with S.H.I.E.L.D. But in terms of him just being out there by himself doing his thing, we haven't really seen that yet. And I think it's only a matter of time before we do, assuming the MCU gets to keep him. But talking about the points that we've kind of mentioned before, I don't think that's actually what's going to happen. If I'm honest with you guys here, I think what you're seeing with regards to the spell of Doctor Strange, the events of Loki, the multiverse crossing over, it's the Marvel Cinematic Universe's equivalent of the multiversal collapse from Marvel Comics. It's all going to coalesce into a singular universe. I'm very much sticking by that theory. I could be entirely wrong, which really begs the question, should we just start calling these left field, right? Because these theories are just out in left field, and who knows if they're gonna come to fruition or not. But I very much think that's what's going to happen. I very much think that what's going to come out of all of this, between the events of Loki and Spider-Man No Way Home and Doctor Strange 2, is you're basically going to end up seeing the entire multiverse as the MCU has created it. So the Fox movies that they now own, the Sony universe that Sony still has the rights to, they all get merged into a singular universe going forward. And that following this, basically whenever a Spider-Man solo film comes out, Sony gets all the cash for that. And whenever Spider-Man appears in anything in the MCU gets money for that. And that's basically it. That's how they split the difference. So Tom Holland isn't going anywhere. Tom Holland's going nowhere. That kind of begs the question, what are we gonna see from the villains in Spider-Man No Way Home? Which I wanna reach out to you guys for. What do you guys think is gonna happen? The villains that are there, Dr. Octopus and Green Goblin, Electro, Lizard, Sandman, which are only 5. We still have a 6th that we're waiting on if we're really going to see a true Sinister Six. What do you think is going to happen to these villains? And who do you think the 6th man is? That's really the big question to ask here, to be honest with you guys, coming off the trailers that we saw. Who do you guys think the 6th member of the Sinister Six is going to be? You think it's going to be Morbius? I've heard a lot of theories out there that it's going to be Morbius. I don't know. It seems kind of weird to thrust Morbius into that role. But regardless, we're going to bring this to an end. Thank you guys for watching, and I will catch you all later. Peace.